Hello, everyone, and welcome to the discussion of Module 15, Building Protection.
I am Milton Ladia, and I will discuss an overview of building protection as well as the three main types.
Hello again, good day to everyone. I'm Samantha Talaron, and I'll be discussing structural, material, and finish protection.
Hello everyone, I'm Seth Kalesa and I'll be discussing about weather-dependent protection, building security, and security protocols.
Good day, everyone. I'm Robert Pelias, and I'll be discussing safety protocols, property insurance, and building codes and regulations.
Okay, so the first thing anyone needs to know about building protection is that it's not formally delineated. So it at first is very broad, but when we take a closer look, we can start to identify certain categories of building protection and certain types according to what exactly is being protected, which I will discuss next, please. Okay, so the three main discernible types of building protection uh, are classified according to what exactly is being protected. So, firstly, we have protection measures that are geared towards the building itself, such as, like, for example, maybe a building in Japan is built with shock absorbers because they are frequently experiencing earthquakes. The second type is protection that is geared towards the occupants of the building. So I think it's a requirement for most buildings nowadays to have a fire escape plan and a accessible fire escape route because that's in the interest of the people who are in the building. And the third is protection geared towards the building's assets and property. So you have security measures like, for example, in a museum, you have pressure plates, you have motion detectors, and such. Next slide, please. Okay, so the categories of building protection that we were able to identify are, which will be discussed subsequently, are structural protection, material protection, finish protection, weather dependent protection, building security, security protocols, safety protocols, property insurance, and lastly, building codes. Now, these may cover one or more of the three types that I have previously discussed because there are many threats that there are many hazards that pose threats to buildings and their occupants. So, in order to combat these varied threats, we also need to come up with varied methods of protection that more often than not they protect more than one of the three categories that I've previously discussed.
So, structural protection pertains to two key points. First is protective measures may be integrated into a building's very design. An example of the integration of protective measures to the building is an arch. It is a well-known example of a structure that is resistant to compressive stress. Thus, it was often used in buildings throughout history since their popularization by the ancient Romans. Today, arches are still favored in large-scale designs, such as in bridges or structural supports, where large loads need to be supported. For the next key point, broadly speaking, all buildings are intended to be structurally sound, such that they will not collapse, and in this case, structural integrity is an important principle of a building design. For instance, as mentioned by Mildun earlier, most, if not all, tall buildings in Japan are designed to withstand earthquakes and are built with a variety of shock absorbers in order to resist mechanical stress. Next is material protection. It refers to the inherent protective capacities of building materials. That is to say, the different materials have different properties and therefore are suited to resist different potential hazards. There are three materials that exhibits protection and safety. First is concrete, which is fire resistant. Second, Stones are more durable than wood. And lastly, steel beams may be employed in construction in order to fortify a building's structural integrity. Indeed, perhaps even Stonehenge was constructed out of large stones so as to ensure its longevity, whereas a wooden structure would collapse and decay. Next is finish protection. Finish protection pertains to protective measures in the form of finishes applied to buildings such as paints and other coatings. These may be applied internally or externally. Examples include paints, which themselves may be formulated to resist water damage, chemical weathering, or exposure to ultraviolet radiation, varnish, facings, glass, and the tinning thereof, and sealants. These are mostly carried out in order to protect against chemical agents that may damage a building like chemical weathering and to mitigate physical mechanical hazards such as heavy raining and flooding in the case of sealants and waterproofing. Ultraviolet radiation resistant coatings are formulated to ensure longevity even after prolonged exposure to sunlight. These safety measures may be even carried out in the name of privacy with glass tips that may be applied to a building's glass work in order to provide an extra measure of security for a building's occupant.
Weather-dependent protection. Protective measures undertaken according to the weather or climate conditions of an area in which its building is constructed. Next slide, please. We have situation one. Buildings constructed in areas with cold climate cannot use porous materials since these will accumulate water, and as the water in these materials freeze, it expands and causes the materials to form cracks, thus compromising its structural integrity. Next slide. We have situation two. A commercial skyscraper in the London, nicknamed the Walkie-Talkie, caused problems because of its reflective facade, which essentially functioned as a concave mirror, concentrating reflected sunlight into a powerful beam, which resulted in street-level temperatures of 117 degrees Celsius nearby. Buildings can be vulnerable to climate change. In the future, there may be an increase in the risk of collapse, declining health, and significant loss of value as a result of more storms, snows, or subsidence damage, water enrichment, deteriorating indoor climate, and reduced building lifetime. In the short term, stronger storms are the greatest challenge. Next slide. Building security. The building security and control system is designed to monitor and control mechanical and electrical installations, fire protection and escape, burglary, assault, and emergency communication. In tall buildings and major complexes, the most important security requirement is a fire safety system. Next, please. Wait. The importance to a building security is that a secure building will decrease the chance of security threats occurring. By having security procedures in place, you can avoid common threats such as robbery and damage to your property. By having a secure building, you're also protecting your staff. Now, these are the ways to improve your building more secure. Use CCTV to monitor your premises. Install an elevator access control system. Use access control to prevent unauthorized intrusions. Upgrade security in your garage. Install a comprehensive building security system. Next, please. Security protocols. Protocols duties are carried out to ensure orderliness and politeness in any given organization, environment, or event. It involves strict adherence to certain procedures and policies about a particular organization, environment, or event. Its purpose is to prevent terrorist attacks, etc. To put it more simply, protocol duties are about exercising control without being too domineering, and that's why the role is a perfect fit for security guards. The duties and responsibilities of a security guard is to enforce laws, rules, and company policies, responding to emergencies, protect property, controlling access to buildings, and protecting employees, guests, and the public, monitoring alarms and surveillance systems, patrolling areas, and performing security checks, writing activity and incident reports. Thank you.
Okay, for safety protocols, this is a broad and diverse topic since it is a situation during of a disaster. So it may have many different safety or safety measures against such as fires, floods, earthquakes, and storms. So for safety protocols, it is where that you will what will you do in a certain disaster, or it is like a disaster management which covers disasters or detecting disasters. For example, for fires, we will such will put such as fire sprinklers, and for flooding, and it will be some flood drains that are designed to minimum the damage to the building or that occurs during a disaster. Next is for earthquakes. For earthquakes, especially since it is a disaster that is already happening, so we will put countermeasures such as a earthquake drill that would ensure the occupants of the building or these clients. And for storms, well, usually storms you can control storms from natural disasters, so you have to follow such as drills as well and take cover after the disaster has happened. Uh, next slide, next slide, please. So during an ongoing disaster, mm, there are different countermeasures or things to do that has different features for buildings, such as let's say the building doesn't have some elevators or the stairs are far away for you to exit, such as fire exit. So there are countermeasures that you should follow, some protocols that are given by the building. So it means that there are ways or things that can be done that a normal building so to do. So in for that there are some buildings that they have assigned a fire alarm, or some buildings that I know that they have a code that once there is a smoke, it won't ring, but it will send in and text or a email to the fire department that they will come and rescue. And also for earthquakes as well. Next slide, please. Okay, for property insurance this is where it happens after the disaster has happened, such as damages or some losses or some things that might be stolen. So property insurance is where the owner gets monetary reimbursement against potential losses. So in order for this to happen, it needs to have a contract with the owner and the insurance company, because if the owner didn't pay something for the insurance company, then he won't get a lot in return for for to have repairs for the building. But when it comes to a clean contract and they have a wonderful or a nice agreement to between each other, then the agreed upon rate will depend on the value of the damage or stolen property in the reimbursement agreements. So next slide, please. So lastly, building codes and regulations. So building codes are a set of rules specify or that gives standards for structures or for buildings that it will give public health and general welfare of the building and its occupants. So one example for building codes and regulations is the International Building Code. So you may be wondering, what's the International Building Code? So it's not usually used here in the Philippines, but it's used mostly in the United States. So the mainly purpose of this code is to establish minimum requirements to safeguard the public safety, health, and general welfare through affordability. So in case the money will come out short, so the code will help. And structural strength of the building, means of egress facilities, the stability, the sanitation, light and ventilation, energy conservation, and safety to life and property from fire and other hazards or disasters. Hopefully none. Next slide, please. So next. I explained that already. So, meaning in the for conclusion of the building codes and regulations, it really is a diverse topic for me and maybe for you. But the building codes and regulations are a set of, as I said before, are rules that followed by by the building designer or the engineers and constructors. For since they were the one that made it, and that's the things that we should follow since the building has different features or things that have hazardous things like lightning rods or wires like that. But uh, so that's all.
So as what we have discussed, building protection is it's a very diverse topic. It's very broad. So uh, in order to properly assess what methods of protection we have to use in a particular building, we have to understand the risks that are posed to that building as well. Because building protection, as varied as it is, it evolved by adapting to these hazards, and that the bottom line is that is what makes building protection so important, and it also determines the effectivity of the measures that we put into place. So thank you.
So that's all about Module 15, Building Protection. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.